Let me start with something unsettling. What if the most important questions of your life were already asked before history even began? Questions like, why does anything exist at all? Why do humans crave meaning? Why does good and evil feel so real? Why does every family carry both love and damage? That's where the book of Genesis begins. Not with religion, with origins. Genesis doesn't open by explaining God, it opens by explaining existence. In the beginning, not when humans appeared, not when civilizations formed, before everything. That already tells you something. Genesis is not trying to argue with science or philosophy. It's asking a deeper question: why is there something instead of nothing? The opening of Genesis is calm. No chaos, no battle of gods, no dramatic violence like ancient myths, just order. Light, time, structure, it presents creation as intentional, not accidental. And whether you read it literally or symbolically, the message is the same. Reality has design. And humans are part of it, not above it. Genesis introduces humans differently than any other ancient story, not as slaves of the gods, not as toys, not as accidents, but as image bearers, which means humans have dignity, value, responsibility. That single idea shapes civilization. Then Genesis does something unexpected. It introduces choice. Humans are given freedom. And immediately they misuse it, not because they're evil, because they want control. That's the core of the Eden story. Not an apple, not a tree, but the desire to decide good and evil on our own terms. That instinct hasn't changed. Genesis shows the first fracture. Shame enters, fear enters, blame enters. Humans hide not from God only, but from each other. That's psychology, not mythology. From there, Genesis zooms out. It stops being cosmic and becomes painfully human. Sibling rivalry, jealousy, violence. Cain and Abel isn't just a murder story, it's about resentment ignored too long, unchecked comparison, unspoken anger, and the frightening idea that evil grows quietly before it explodes. Genesis keeps repeating a pattern. Humans build, humans break, God restrains chaos, humans test boundaries again. This isn't pessimism, it's realism. Then comes the flood story, often misunderstood. Genesis isn't obsessed with destruction, it's obsessed with corruption. The flood represents a reset, a refusal to let violence become normal. And notice something important. After the flood, humans are still flawed, which means the problem was never environment alone. It was the human heart. That's a brutal insight. Genesis then shifts gears. It moves from global stories to one family, Abraham. Not powerful, not perfect, chosen not because he's impressive, but because he's willing to trust. That's new. Faith becomes relationship, not fear. Abraham's story is about uncertainty, leaving comfort, walking without guarantees. Genesis doesn't romanticize this. Abraham doubts, fails, tries shortcuts, yet the relationship continues. That matters. Then comes Isaac, then Jacob, and Genesis becomes very honest about families. Favoritism, sibling tension, manipulation, regret. This book doesn't clean up its heroes, which is why it feels real. Jacob's story is especially revealing. A man who schemes his way forward until life breaks him. He wrestles literally and metaphorically, and only after losing control does he receive a new identity. That's not religious symbolism, that's human transformation. Then Genesis reaches one of its most powerful arcs, Joseph, a story about betrayal, injustice, patience, and perspective. Sold by brothers, wrongly accused, forgotten in prison, and yet not bitter. Joseph's wisdom is rare. He understands something Genesis has been teaching all along. You can't always control events, but you can control response. Joseph doesn't say suffering was good. He says meaning can grow out of it. That's mature wisdom. Genesis ends quietly, not with the world fixed, not with evil gone, but with survival, with continuity, with hope that the story isn't over. Here's the deeper truth of Genesis. It's not a science book, it's not a rule book, it's a human origin story. Why we long for meaning, why we repeat mistakes, why families are complicated, why freedom is dangerous, why hope survives anyway. Genesis explains why later books exist, why Job suffers, why Psalms cry out, why Proverbs warns, why Ecclesiastes questions, why Love and Song of Solomon matters. It all starts here. Genesis doesn't answer every question, it frames them. And sometimes framing a question correctly is more powerful than answering it. If you've ever wondered, why does life feel meaningful and broken at the same time? Why do humans keep repeating patterns? Why does hope refuse to die? Genesis understands you. This book isn't ancient because it's outdated. It's ancient because it's foundational. And maybe that's why Genesis still matters. Because before you ask, how should I live? Genesis asks, who are you and why are you here at all?